Welcome to TruthStream. Today we are here with Nada Kassem and Lisa Schermerhorn. And this show is in part because Lisa saw Nada on one of our previous shows with Gianni Salvatore. And the beauty of the way that we do things is we never know where each show is going to lead to. So, ladies, thank you so much for reaching out and expressing your gratitude for each other. And this is a platform for you to share how you've learned a bit from each other and about each other's culture. So please, Lisa, why don't we start with you and let the viewers know the impact that Nada had, and we'll just let this go organically. So please.
So one of the things that I've been struggling with lately is a lot of anti-Jewish talk and a lot of blame and calling these overarching comments that all Jews are evil and all Jews are bad and all Jews are Nazis, which has just stunned me because as a child, when I was 15 years old, I was forced to study the Holocaust for an entire year. And it was drummed into me. I watched videos, read every book. And so I really, that was really programmed into me about the Holocaust and what was happening, and really made a huge mark on me and my life. So when I watched your show and I listened to Nada and Salvatore and heard their perspectives and talked about Jews from a very neutral perspective, and really more loving, and there was no name calling, and they were just using facts, and the fact that Nada actually read Theodore Herzl's book about Zionism, like to the detail of where she went to get her information, not just listening to other people and parroting, anything, that's lies or things. She does her own research. And so we connected and spoke for over an hour. And we were both astonished about all the things that we were told about each other and our cultures, growing up, especially what I was taught about Palestine. And so we just thought it would be really interesting for people to have a perspective. And I just want to highlight, I am not a religious Jew. So if people want to quote things from the Talmud or the Torah or the Bible at me, I can't talk to that. I'm really talking from the perspective of a cultural Jew and how I was raised and what I was taught about Israel and Palestine.
Okay, well, there's definitely some insight. Thank you for that. And then, and maybe go into Nada. What was it like talking with Lisa? How was that for you? And what did you guys? What was the focus of that conversation?
It was. I loved that we both came into the conversation very open-minded. There was no judgment from the minute, she answered and she said hello. I think it was truly hey, we are sitting on two different sides, so let's have a conversation and find a way to meet in the middle. And she definitely shared a lot of information that made me go, holy moly, I had no idea about this. And it was eye-opening, but also there was definitely some empathy on both sides, because I felt really bad. I mean, I feel bad for not only the generational oppression of the Jewish people. That's something that, as a human being, I wouldn't be human if I don't feel that way. But just to hear Lisa's side of the story as to how she was raised and what she heard about my people growing up, it really made me go, I feel like if politicians sat down and actually had a heart-to-heart, the world would not be as chaotic as it is today. People are so guarded when they speak to one another, and they're not vulnerable, and it really causes these tensions to even get worse. And I think that's what Lisa and I had in common, is that we were both really raw and open and just really out there and just very willing to absorb one another.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, well, when I met Lisa, and I think Scott can attest to this, we met her in Anaheim, and all I saw was this radiant, wonderful human being. I didn't see anything else. Like, it's just so, it's amazing what people struggle with based on, other people's perceptions. And so I think some of the stories that have been a part of Lisa's background and anything that she wants to share. But yeah, we're kind of open this up for you guys to really take the floor and let people know whatever it is that you want to discuss. So please.
Yeah, a lot of these conflicts seem to be constructs that we, through cultural obligation or whatever, we tend to participate in them. And it's really cool to see a human moment where, traditionally opposed viewpoints come together in a really human moment. And it sounds like that's what happened in your conversation. And
Well,
that's what we
this
need more
this
of, I think.
this past year or two has been really mind-blowing for me, and I've had to have an open mind because one of the things that I grew up with was Sephardic Jews and Ashkenazi Jews, right? And I was like, okay, if you do your DNA test, and I'm supposedly from the promised land, which I was told was, we came out of Egypt and entered into Palestine, Israel, whatever you wanted to call it, then why doesn't my DNA go back there? My DNA goes to Ukraine and Belarus. I was born an Ashkenazi Jew, and no one could ever explain to me what the difference was. So there was always a question in my mind around, where did I really come from? So that always was there. And then on top of that, I grew up in a non-Jewish community. So there were 11 Jews in this entire town. And so I often had pennies thrown at me. I was called a Christ killer. And so when I was growing up, I was afraid of just the word Jesus, because I was always attacked and accused of, being, and so the idea of Jesus just scared me. I thought he was evil. Like I was afraid I was going to, something bad would happen to me, which also, when you create fear like that, it brings the Jewish community closer together, because we're all like, we needed community. I think just like the Palestinians have to go inward. And the stories that I was told all go back to the Holocaust. Every holiday, for any of you who have spent time around Jews, they tried to kill us and then we survived. So in our DNA is a victim mentality. We were always told how they tried to kill us and then we survived, from Egypt all the way through our history. So this whole idea of the Holocaust, and then suddenly we needed a place to go. There was a boat, I mentioned earlier to you that there was a big passenger liner that was filled with Jews to bring to the US, and the US turned it around. And they all went back to Germany, and they were all separated and exterminated. And so, going back to the history of what as an American Jew, not religious, just indoctrinated in me, was this constant fear of being attacked and always needing a place to go to in case someone, tried to kill me or come after me.
Wow. And Nada, what are some of the stories that you wanted to share, and then we can get into obviously how you've helped each other understand more about your backgrounds.
Yeah. So as a Palestinian, growing up, we always, and this is something that's cultural as well, and something that we should absolutely break the cycle. When referring to the Zionist regime, there was always this, I don't know why they would just say Jews. The Jews did this, the Jews did that. And I think it just became just vernacular that they used on a daily basis instead of them using the correct terminology which is Zionism. So as I was growing up, for me, it was this association of, okay, what's going on in Palestine, Israel, is something that the Jews is doing to the Palestinian Muslims and Christians. But then as I started to really do my own research, and when I really started to become interested in what is really going on in there, what's the conflict. And then I know we briefly talked about my faith last time, and this is, again, we're not having a conversation about faith, but as a Muslim, I'm not allowed to hate Jews or Christians. It's actually a sin. It's forbidden, because they are basically what we call them the people of the book, and they're descendants of Abraham. So I started to, for me, that's cognitive dissonance at that point, because I'm like, I'm not supposed to be hating Jews. This is wrong. What's going on? And so that's when the term Zionism started to really come to play. And there's a huge difference in the term Zionist and the term Jew, because those two are, for me, are mutually exclusive. I know a few Zionists that are not even Jews, and it, to me, because it's not based off of religion. It's really based off of a political ideology. It's a political movement, and so I had to shift my thinking, and I had to correct my family or my friends whenever they use the wrong terminology, and remind them that this is not a fight or a war or any conflict that we have with the Jewish people, because a lot of Jewish people stand with us. This is a fight against oppression of human beings, regardless of their faith, their race, or where they come from. And that is something that I had to break. And it's the generational curse, right? Because obviously my parents are refugees, and it's a very hot topic. And sometimes it's not as an easy conversation, but now we all have an understanding that Zionism and Judaism are two different things, and we can't punish and we cannot group people based off of a characteristic or something that they have in common, to fit our narrative, right? I want to fix this. I want to find a solution. I want to fix the issue, not just to label people something and just be angry forever and just have a reason to hate someone. So I think that is something that I had to grow up to be, which is very different than the old mindset in just some of the people that I grew up around in the Middle East, but then also really just try to embrace people for who they are and understand their story. And just because I understand their story doesn't mean I agree with it, obviously. And I can easily say that, Zionism is fundamentally wrong, but it doesn't mean that I don't want the safety for the Jewish people. I think those two they can be separated.
It was interesting because when Nada and I had a conversation about my experience in Israel, so I had the opportunity to go with my cousins, and we had a private tour which took us into the West Bank. So I actually went into Jericho. I saw what literally made me feel nauseous. So imagine you're driving in the West Bank, and there's just acres and acres and acres of farmland, lush green, palm dates everywhere. And then all of a sudden you look, and there's barbed wire and fences around these cities. And you go into Jericho, and you're driving around, and there's trash everywhere, and people who are just walking around barefoot, you can see. And so the difference for me was seeing how glaring it was to see how they were living compared to what I was witnessing in Israel. And the justification of the stories that we were told when we were there was going back to the 7-Day War. So when Israel was initially founded, and then they were bringing the Jews into Israel, and then apparently, was it the 67? Was it in 1967, I think?
It was in the 60s.
The 60s. I think it was 1967. So what happened was, we were told that the surrounding Arab countries were going to attack because they wanted the Jews out. They told the Palestinians to leave because they didn't want any of them to get hurt. And then the Jews fought back and won, and then the Palestinians couldn't get back to their homes. And that was literally the story that I was told. And Neda was like, well, what?
Yeah, that's not what happened.
So,
unfortunately.
and so, but to understand is that the indoctrination of what the sides are told. And for me, it was like seeing the way that they lived. And we were also told that when they went from the Palestinian Authority to Hamas, that the money that was going to Hamas, and Hamas was using it for missiles and using it for terrorism and not taking care of their people. So that was the explanation to me as to why the Palestinians had to live the way that they did.
But that wasn't true according to Neda, correct?
According to history, yes.
According to history. So
No,
can you
it's just that yeah, so you want to hear her side and you know, hear the truth.
please,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
I think the viewers do as well.
Yeah. So in 1948, that's when the Nakba happened. And I think we touched briefly on that the last time. And the Nakba, it just translates to the word catastrophe. And that's when, with British forces, the Zionist movement really gained some ground. So they were armed with the British forces, and they came in with force, and they basically went into some of the villages and they took over. They killed people, they displaced people, and people were just trying to flee for their lives, basically. And I think I mentioned the story of my family. My parents were from Nazareth, and my grandmother grabbed whatever she could because the British forces and the Zionists were coming in, and they were like, she was scrambling to get her children and leave and run away as quickly as she possibly can. When they talk about the 7-Day War, that's what they were talking about. They have to label it a war and not an invasion. The invasion makes it sound bad, obviously. I mean, we all know what invasions are like. So from a person that, I mean, I say that I'm second generation away from, the refugees and then the Nakba. I'm hearing these stories directly from my aunts and my uncles that they were not infants. My mom was an infant, but my aunt, who's my neighbor, by the way, she's 85 years old. So she was a teenager when that happened. And she recalls all of it. She's like, I know what I was doing. I know what I was wearing. Whenever I see a British soldier, the tank is coming down the road, and, you have your soldiers that are wearing the Zionist gear, and they're basically aiming and shooting, and you're fleeing for your life. So they had to leave Palestine at the time because they were refugees. Some people decided to stay. And whenever they tried to come back, that's when, obviously the Zionist regime was like, no, because Israel was already established. And, they basically said, if you've left, if you're gone, then too bad for you. But the refugee situation back in the 40s and the 50s is different than what it is now. Now, if you're a refugee, you may gain some kind of residency, or you may have some status within the country that you're currently in, but it wasn't like that back then. So it really, we thought it was good. Well, not we, because I wasn't born yet, but they thought it was going to be a temporary situation. Maybe there was going to be some assistance from the Arab countries to get back the land that people were in, but that did not happen. And that's why really my family just remained refugees, because they couldn't go back to the land that they own. And they could not really do anything because my mom's side of the family went to Beirut, so they were in refugee camps. But I think, so Lisa, when I hear what you say about the 7-Day War, I think that narrative had to be told in that manner in order to gain the trust and to get buy-in from people to say, I want to go back to Israel because I did not do this. It was a war that was lost. I think it's a harder pill to swallow if you say, yeah, we were the aggressor, we were the oppressor, we were the ones that went in with British forces and did ABC. Now, granted, I'm not saying all Jews were included. That's absolutely not the case. There were Jews living in Palestine at the time, and they were also oppressed, and they were also subjected to the nonsense that came from, the British and the Zionists, because they lived in harmony, they lived in peace, they were, enjoying the riches of, whatever's coming out of Gaza and Jaffa and Jerusalem. So they were part of the group that was oppressed, but they were a really small minority in comparison to the Christians and the Muslims. But I think that's the sad part of this, is that they're trying to erase history because it just makes it it makes it an easier pill to swallow, that you don't feel like you're the bad guy. And it's sad. And right now, I don't know if you noticed, but lately within the last 3 months, I'm noticing that they're no longer referring to us as Palestinians. They're referring to us as Arabs, because they want to push the narrative that, well, Arabs colonized the region. Well, I did my ancestry DNA, and I only have 7% Arabia. Okay. The majority of my DNA is from the Levantine. So, and it's very, very obvious. It's very clear where I'm from. And so to me, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not ethnically Arab. Maybe I'm culturally Arab, but I am from there. I have my DNA and it shows that. So them calling me an Arab and not a Palestinian is really sad because they are just trying to erase any evidence that Palestinians existed, that I have a right to be there just as much as someone that is Jewish and has the DNA from that region. And I think it's just, it's these stories, it's the propaganda that keeps getting pushed, and one is clearly winning, and it's gaining sympathy. And there is some shift here and there, but I think that's the part that just, it breaks my heart. It just makes me really sad.
Well, we were told that Palestine was a wasteland, and that was talked about in your last video. And we had no idea that it was a vibrant place where there was so much trade and so much going on. And what's interesting is when you go to Jerusalem and how it's split up, and how there's the Muslim quarter, the Christian quarter, and the Jewish quarter, and everything is like, there's soldiers everywhere. It's just a very strange feeling when you're there. But there's definitely an energy over by the Western Wall and the Dome of the Rock. There's some kind of a healing energy. I don't know if it's a portal or some kind of a vortex, and there are people who talk about that. There's a lot of mystery around that. My cousin had an experience where he was having severe back pain and he was using a cane. He's my age. And he went over and prayed at the wall and literally turned around and walked away and didn't need his cane. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's something that's there that was desired. So that we don't know, right? There's something else there, I think. And then there's a reason why that part of the land, that part was desired. But I just wanted to talk about the fact that here's a woman who I so admired, and is talking about humanity and talking about individuals, because there are evildoers and there are people who are trying to do good. And when I hear all over, when these overarching statements of all Palestinians or all Muslims are terrorists, you know, when you hear that, I'm like, no, everyone loves their children. They love their children. They love their families. This is all important to us. And when you get Israelis and Jews and Palestinians out of Israel together, they have special programs and camps where they come together and they learn about each other. It's a love fest. You know, we all want to get along. We do. I mean, where we go one, we go all. When you start to bring the hate in, and when you start to accuse people of all these things, you're not helping anything. And when I hear people, you know, launching these statements about an entire group of people on either side, on anywhere, there's no upside to it. There's no upside to it, because at the end of the day, at one point we all got along, we all loved each other, and we all intermarried, and we all, you know, were together. And it's the politics. Look at what's happened in 2 years. In just the indoctrination of our children and everything else. People, I'm a hypnotherapist, and I study the unconscious mind. And when I see how quickly people can literally be brainwashed so fast, and you know, people want to hear things, and so they grab onto it for safety. And I know in the Jewish faith, Israel is sacred because it's our last place to go in case something happens, you know, another attempted Holocaust. And so they hold on to it, and the Jews are encouraged to send money because you never know. And it's always very fear-based. And so we'll always have a place that's a promised land. And the way that the Palestinians are depicted, it leaves them with no place for empathy. It's done that on purpose. And if you really get a chance to understand both sides of the story and sit and really understand that we're all human and we are all here to love one another and help each other ascend.
Yeah. You know, I came across a video that was really incredible. It was 4 or 5 Israeli, I'm going to say not teens, but they're like early 20s. They're telling their stories about how they refuse to serve in the IDF because they think it's inhumane. So they're stepping outside the pack, and they're realizing that this is not okay. It doesn't feel right. There's something wrong about this. And that's very admiring to me. I mean, I was in awe just watching them speak. Some of them actually had to go to jail. So I think one young lady, she was in jail for 2 years because she refused to serve in the IDF. And that's the generation that we need. We need from both sides to say, hey, there's something not right with this whole thing. And I'm going to say something that probably a lot of Palestinians are not going to be happy with, but I know Hamas keeps coming up, and I think that first of all, I think we talked about this the last time, that Hamas actually was funded by, believe it or not, Zionism to combat the PLO.
Of course.
Yes, and there's so much evidence, and it's actually been discussed so many times, because they wanted Yasser Arafat to go away. They saw the Muslim Brotherhood out of Egypt, and they were like, hey, let's get these people to kick the PLO, and it became their worst nightmare, basically. So it's kind of it's very bizarre. But I think that we also have an opportunity to, whenever, yes, even though we are repressed, and I know a lot of people say, well, we're oppressed, we're fighting back. Yes, there's different ways to fight back. I don't think that murdering innocent civilians is the right way to do it at all. I've seen, recently we've had 2 stabbings, and I think that's wrong. But I also think the raid on Jenin and Hawara and burning down an entire village with people in it, by the way, from Israeli settlers to the Palestinians, is wrong. Like both, there's a lot going on that I'm trying to weed through. And a part of me always says, okay, you're Palestinian, you're oppressed, and you have to fight your oppressor, and you need to do this. But I also think that mentality makes us uncivilized. We all have to have some civility and really get down to the root cause of the issue and have conversations. Maybe I'm living in La La Land and I'm just all about kumbaya, but I feel like there's another way from both sides. But honestly, Lisa, I don't know if you've seen what's been going on lately, but just the Israeli settlers that come in and the illegal settlers that come in, I don't even think half of them are Jews. I read the other day, I read a story that this one person, he was, and I don't know if I can say this. Can I say anything I want on here? I don't know if I'm going to get censored. Okay.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't want to, I'm trying not to offend anyone, but there's this gentleman, and I don't want to use his name, but you can easily Google the story. He was a pedophile. He was an accused pedophile here in the United States. And he basically said, I converted to Judaism, and he was able to get his trip to the homeland, and he escaped being prosecuted, and now he lives in Israel. And I'm like,
are you talking about Jeffrey Epstein, or? I had the same theory. I knew it.
Well, it's the right. Was that the birthright?
Yes. Yeah. It was.
Yeah.
But it was crazy to me because he now is living in Israel. So to me, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, Israelis want these type of people here. That's a little scary. Like, how do you want? Why would you? But I think it's just to increase the number of people that are moving back to Israel, to say, see, people want to move back here, but you're not getting quality people. You're getting pedophiles, and and God forbid this person decides, I'm going to start doing whatever I want to do here because I'm immune. And that's weird, and that's just scary to me.
But if you look at the overarching patterns, okay, of, let's say, the Khazarian mafia, they came in, took the Jews from their homes, took all of their belongings, carted them off to concentration camps, separated the families. Now, you can say whether the numbers are correct or not. I wasn't there, so I can't speak to it, but I have cared for people who have survived the Holocaust. I've spent time with them. I have family in Poland, gone. So from that standpoint, when you have people who say it didn't happen, I kind of have a problem with that. Okay. But at the same time, then you're saying that Jews came in and did the exact same thing to the Palestinians. Does that make sense? It's like these people who left, Germany, Austria, France, all these people where they're invaded, that you think, okay, they're going to go in and do the same thing to people. Does that make sense? But when you think about the Zionists and the Khazarians who created that, they're not very creative. They just keep doing the same patterns, right? And then in Russia, the Bolsheviks and kicking all the Jews out. That's how I ended up in the US. I had my family leaving the Ukraine and Belarus because of, the pogroms and everything that happened there. So it's this constant moving and creating fear and keeping people in this place of justifying the behaviors. And I think if the Jews could really take a look at what really happened and know the truth and spend time with one another, I think that there would be a lot more compassion and understanding. But the way that the indoctrination and the news, the reinforcement. I mean, I can't even imagine what you have to watch on the news and see the lies that are portrayed over and over and over again, depicting of your own people. It's got to be heartbreaking.
It is very heartbreaking. And I don't know if you've seen my TikToks, but I think one of the hardest things is posting something that is not neutral. It's very pro-Palestinian, not mentioning Israel, just, hey, I'm going to celebrate this Palestinian artist. And the comments under the video are just really out there. And I think it's just that hate that I don't understand, because to me, it's like, if I'm not talking about you, and if I'm talking about something completely, neutral to you, but it means something to me, why would you come on my page? Why would you come on the video and say, you're a terrorist, you support Hamas, you want to murder all Jews? And I'm like, who said anything about Jews? Like, it's just, but you hit the nail on the head. It is the indoctrination from a young age, which is, I'm going to get them before they get me. So I'm going to do all this stuff just in case they have an idea that they want to hurt me. And if we live like this, there will be no peace anywhere ever. Instead of I'm not saying wait until something happens to you, but what if nothing happens and you're just oppressing me and treating me horribly, just in case? That's the cycle that we need to break. And the propaganda is just mind-boggling. And there's Hezbollah, and then there's just so much stuff that just it's flooding people's minds, and they are trying to weed through all of it. And so to them, it's, I got to get them before they get me. And it's more of a self-defense. And you said it earlier, it's like a victimization, because the Jewish people have really been victimized numerous times. And so now it's reaction out of fear, to where it slid them into the oppressor position and the persecutor, which is just, it's sad. It sucks.
It absolutely does. And, the whole thing about saying the overarching, like calling you, saying that, you want to kill Jews and all of that, having that same thing happen right now with all of these people who are saying overarchingly, all Jews are evil, or all Jews, are devil worshippers or witches and all of these things. And I'm like, I have never heard of any of these things. And if you spent time with my family and my extended family, they're philanthropists. They're very loving, kind people. They want to be of service. Are all Jews good? No. Are all Palestinians good? No. Are all, of any type of background, you have good and bad. But the overarching comments are what really get me. And to really start in about, comments, which I don't want to go into, but there's just been a lot. And the more we come together, the more we understand each other, the more we learn to love one and each other, and love our differences and uniqueness and what makes us special, instead of being afraid of what makes us different.
I've got two questions, one for Lisa, one for Nada. Lisa, this is starting to sound like a pretty large scale trauma-based mind control situation. Both sides of this disagreement have both been exposed to an awful lot of trauma. They were fed a narrative, and they've carried it out now generationally. So I'd like you to speak to that, but also, while I have a second, Nada, you mentioned the difference between Jews and Zionists. And I'd like you to expand on that. But you know, for me, it triggered a memory for me that there was a widely circulated clip with Joe Biden talking about how he was a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. He was a Zionist. Again, bringing the politics of the whole situation full circle. But so yeah, whoever wants to respond.
Yeah, I can start. I can't speak too much about Judaism because I'm not a Jew, but I can tell you that Judaism is an Abrahamic religion that they use the Torah as their book, and Moses is the prophet. It's just like Christianity and Islam in that they have a set of rules that they have to adhere to: love one another, don't kill, don't murder, don't do bad shit. Basically, all three religions are the same. This is my quick summary of that. And to me, Zionism is a political movement because it does not embrace Judaism as Judaism is supposed to be. Judaism is about loving one another and not killing people for a piece of land, whereas Zionism is to get the Jews that were in Europe out of Europe. So now it's no longer the Europeans' problem. Put them somewhere where they can have their own place and they can do whatever they want, and we'll fund it. And that's basically kind of like how it came about. I'm totally oversimplifying here. So to me, it's just like you saying, or not you personally, but just in general, when people say, you know, that we have the KKK and their association with Jesus Christ and Christianity. And I'm like, there's no freaking way that you can tell me that anyone who's a KKK member is a true Christian. I refuse to believe that. Just like I refuse to believe that anyone who's in Al-Qaeda or in ISIS is a Muslim, because we're talking three Abrahamic religions that are, they're based, the fundamental of them is God and love. How are you saying that hate groups can use that as their flag and as their banner? I refuse to believe that. So that's the disassociation for me from Judaism and Zionism, and just how it came about. Really, it started in the late 1800s because of all of the Jewish hate that was going on in Europe, and it was just like, push them out. And evangelical Christians like Joe Biden loves the idea of Zionism because to him it serves two narratives, which is one, I don't have to deal with, sadly, I don't have to deal with the Jews and everything that happened there. And then two, Jesus Christ will come back whenever all the Jews are back in Israel. It's just, and he's come out and said that. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I was going to say something about that. But to me, that's the difference between the two. One is a political movement. It's very based on imperialism, and actually in the case of Zionism in Palestine, it's more colonialism. And then you have Judaism, which is a loving religion.
So I want to add on to this because I've never told you guys about this, but when I lived in Massachusetts, there was a hate crime that happened. It was a Jewish art teacher, and these kids painted swastikas all over their house. And we quickly formed an organization called No Place for Hate. And as a fundraiser for that, I created a book called God Through the Eyes of Children, an interfaith guide, so that people could see the perspective of God from children, their perspective. So what I did was I went to all of the churches, the synagogue, and I found an imam because we didn't have one in Duxbury. So we found one close by, and I gave them all assignments. I said, I want you to go to I went to all the clergy, and I said, I want you to give me a write-up about what you believe, who you believe God is from the perspective of your faith. And then I gave them a list of 7 questions for the children, for the religious studies. What does God look like? Write a poem, write a story, draw a picture. Every time I look at this book, I get tears in my eyes. Because from the child's perspective, it's all love. It's the same message. It's all the same. And so when you look at the pictures and the poems and all of it, it was just came from this place of love. And so we did that as a fundraiser for the No Place for Hate, for educating people in the community. So anyway, I think I have 10 books left because I printed them out myself. So anyway, and here's another thing about the Khazarian mafia experimenting on their own people. If you look at what was happened during COVID and the vaccine numbers, I think Israel has one of the highest forced vaccinations of its kind, and now all of a sudden they're backpedaling on what's happened to all these people.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
all these people are now having all of these, so, you know, all of these reactions, and Netanyahu was talking about how they can track everyone now, and
Mhm.
that they'll be able to track, you know, all of their health concerns. I mean, they use them as guinea pigs.
Mhm.
And so it's this constant thing of, you know, basically abusing your own people and convincing them it's for the good, for their good. And going back to, there's something, the science of your ancestry, epigenetics. So when you have a history of abuse going back generations, what happens is it actually changes the DNA. It doesn't change the DNA, it changes the way the DNA is expressed. I work with a lot of indigenous people, helping them with their own ancestral trauma. And I've gone back up to 10 generations. So when you have generation after generation after generation that's traumatized, that comes through unconsciously in behaviors of automatic fear, automatic distrust, and that runs people. They're born with that. So when you reinforce that over and over and over again, they actually did a study with mice where they had them smell a particular smell and shocked them every time they smelled the smell until they associated it. Their grandpups would smell the smell and run.
Wow.
Yeah. And they've done studies after World War II. During World War II, the Netherlands was blockaded because they were fighting the Nazis, and they starved, and I think something like 20,000 people died of starvation in the Netherlands, and no one really talks about that. And they did a study on the women who were pregnant and those babies during that time of starvation and the trauma, and the difference between those children and the children born in after. Significant difference in schizophrenia, anxiety, weight issues. So we inherit a lot. So when people are coming in, they're already predisposed for fear. When you have it come through their DNA. And if you look at a lot of people, like the indigenous people, I spent some time this past summer, and I was shocked. They won't look you in the eye. And I was like, I don't understand. And they said, well, we've been beaten down so much that we don't even understand why these white people are all here and why they want to hear what we have to say. And it broke my heart.
Wow. Lisa, I had a quick question. So you've learned a lot about this recently in the last couple of years, and I think you and I had a conversation that your family, as far as, you know, being Jewish, you said most of them aren't aware of this division, like the Ashkenazis, and so
well, they know there's Sephardic and Ashkenazi.
Okay, please, yeah, go ahead into because we talked about that. And so when you're lumped into this group, you're going, wait a second, my family doesn't really even know about this. So whatever that topic, please.
Not one member of my family. I'm the only person who's not vaccinated. The only person, I'm the only DNA. Oh, I don't even know how far out it goes, but everyone, I'm the anomaly, complete anomaly in my family. So we grew up knowing that there's Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews. My cousin, who's Ashkenazi, married a woman who was Sephardic. She grew up as a half Iraqi, half Iranian, and then they escaped to Israel. But what they don't know is anything about the Khazarian mafia. There's no information. None of that is taught. That was new to me. And so, you know, I wrote a book called "And Every Belief is a Lie." I mean, when you literally are taught something and then find out almost everything that you are taught is not true, and having to sit with that. And that's what cracked me open to listen to everything, because I know that what I thought I knew, I don't know. I know this much. And the more I think I know, the less I realize I know. And so I talk about our programming and how we're programmed, how we're indoctrinated. I mean, if you look at just the past 2 years, I mentioned this before, of how fast people can get indoctrinated through programming, through the news, through our telephone, through the computer, the constant repetition. What happens is they put us in fight or flight. The blood leaves our body. We go into that state where our autonomic nervous system wants to grab onto the first thing that makes sense. So they does. And just because it makes sense doesn't make it true. And just because it's true doesn't mean it makes sense. But we grab onto what we think is true for survival. And when we take that information and now we're letting that fight or flight run us because the news reinforces it every day, the New York Times, the Wall Street, everything. All of the news cycle is constant bombardment of keeping you in fight or flight. So you don't learn you can't think clearly and you can't discern.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if you guys even know that we are going on the 12th week of Israelis in Tel Aviv. I mean, there's riots, there's demonstrations against the Netanyahu regime. People don't know this, which boggles my mind, right? Because we support Israel. The United States supports Israel. But why, as Americans, we don't know about this? I hear it and I see it because I look at Al Jazeera and I look at the news directly from Palestine and Israel. So I see it. 11 weeks in a row, they've gone down to the streets. They're rioting. They're protesting because of the unbelievable amount of illegal settler violence, not only against the Palestinians, but also against some of the Jews that live in Israel that are pro-Palestinian. I mean, it does not make any sense to me that this is not on the news. So to piggyback off of what you're saying, they control the narrative, right? There's a narrative control, so they can keep us thinking a certain way. And luckily, there are some that break out of that pack, but most people, they don't really think outside the box. Unfortunately, everyone is busy. To your point earlier, everyone loves their children. Everyone is trying to make ends meet, right? Trying to get work, trying to put food on the table. They want to make sure that their core family does not fall apart. And so they don't have time to do their research. And so they just really believe whatever Fox or CNN or MSNBC or whatever they hear on the news. And and news is not supposed to be biased, but everyone knows that it's totally biased and it's pushing you in a certain direction.
Right. What was interesting is that at the age of 15, as I mentioned earlier, I was put into this Holocaust class. And I remember every Sunday being traumatized, watching these movies over and over again and reading books and having this reinforced over and over and over again. I'm like, one class of 2 hours would have been plenty. And I remember sitting there going, how did people who were loving neighbors turn on each other so fast? Like, it never understood how you could go from being in communities where everyone shopped in each other's shops, everyone loved each other, to suddenly being arch enemies like that. Mm-hmm. And now I know why I was forced to study all of that at the age of 15, because I was put here for this right now. Right. And I just got the chills up my spine, but it's really important. It's all about love. And we need to start questioning and really thinking, is it really all of one particular group? And Neda and I had such a wonderful conversation. And if she lived closer, I'd be hanging out with her all the time. Yes. I honestly, I really have this deep love for this woman and the work she's doing and how she's putting herself out there. It takes a lot of courage to stand up and speak up when, was it Roger Waters who speaks out from about the Palestinians all the time? And I remember looking at him, years ago, because I was indoctrinated to hate him because he was standing up for people who were trying to kill me. And now I look at the courage that he's had. And, if I have family members and people who know me watch this, I'm going to catch a lot of shit.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, they labeled Jon Stewart a self-hating Jew. And it's kind of sad because, he never once came out and said the Jews are bad, Muslims are good. Never. He just said, hey, Palestinians are enduring a lot for 76 years of oppression. This is not okay. So he speaks up against the acts that the Israeli government is committing. We criticize our own government all the time, that That's okay. It is okay to call out bad behavior. So when he comes out and he says that he's labeled a self-hating Jew, it really makes me sad, because I don't think it's okay to label someone if they're doing the right thing and they're calling others out on their behavior. So it's to your point, it's all about love. But at this point, I will settle for a decent conversation with someone, and then we can talk about love later.
Well, doesn't it seem like in every instance, whether it's, literally good cop versus bad cop, or on down the line, it's people that seek power over others seem to be the problem in every instance. I mean, that's the problem with politics, is it attracts people that are seeking power over others. The problem with the police force, same thing. Legal profession, on and on and on it goes. It seems, maybe I'm oversimplifying, but that seems to be the real problem in all of these.
Well, it's power and control, right? And the thing that we have to understand is there are more of us than them. And when we all come together and start speaking the truth about what's going on, and start really educating each other about what the truth is, and stop spreading hate and stop pitting people against each other, then we have a chance. Because we're all going in one direction, and we all need to come together, because we're all fighting this fight together.
I agree, Lisa. I think where I struggle is, you and I are on the same side and we're on the same page. I think most people are not invested because they're not impacted. And so they choose the side that's more popular, and they don't want to ruffle any feathers, and they don't want to stick out like a sore thumb and speak out against certain things, because they're just trying to live their day to day. So I think that's one of the issues that or just the roadblocks that I've had to encounter, which is, I'm just trying to get people to just listen to the basics. I'm not asking you to take my side. I'm just trying to get you to listen to the story and look at the facts and the history. So until that shift happens, we're just going to be talking to each other, and just anyone, and Joe and Scott, because they're hosting us on their show. And just anyone who really, cares about politics or has an interest, a direct interest, because they live in that region, or, they're just interested in history. But I think something interesting happened in the last 24 hours, and I'm going to shift just a little bit away from just what we were talking about. And there was a congressional hearing yesterday where the CEO of TikTok went to Congress, and he was basically trying to say, hey, don't ban TikTok. Like, we are an okay platform. We are a good social media platform. We take all the precautions that we need, that up to US standards, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch the congressional hearing. It was 4.5, 5 hours of them drilling him, disrespecting him, cutting him off. It was the most barbaric interaction I've seen in a long time. But this is how people in governments, no matter where they are, this is how they talk to each other, and that's how they talk to the people. So and then the people start to emulate that behavior. That's why we had, what happened on January 6th in the Capitol, and just, you have this hate between the Republicans and the Democrats, and it's just this weird, polarizing conversations that are happening. So I'm just trying to get to a neutral. I need a pH 7 for now, and then we can hopefully try to have like a decent conversation where we can really talk through some of this, some of the facts. But everyone is just really polarized at the moment, and I say everyone, and I just generalize, and I shouldn't, but the majority of the people are very, very polarized, and I think that's where I'm trying to just get to a neutral place. Sorry, that was very long-winded, but that's my little two piece.
You are true. There's a polarization going on now. There was just a whole announcement of not allowing, was it the athletes, any transgender, was it male to female, to participate in the Olympics or any of that. And there's a whole thing going on around that. And I was like, that happened in 2 years. How often did you even hear about sex change and transgender? And now I see children, heartbreakingly talking about how their bodies have been mutilated and how heartbreak. So it's like when you see the brainwashing that goes on, and where are the people who think? We need thinkers again. We need people who can really start questioning the narrative and stand up for their own. What are your values? Forget about what you're being told. What are your values? Sorry, I don't mean to point in your chest.
Doesn't it
Okay.
seem
Pisses me off.
like, you know, we get caught up in this whole idea of right and wrong, and people very
Right.
much disagree about right and wrong. But we're part of nature. You know, I mean, we on this planet, we're part of nature. Nature doesn't concern itself with right and wrong. Nature concerns itself with balance. It always seeks
That's right.
balance. And I
That's
think
right.
if we emulate that, and if we seek balance, moments like this will happen,
Right.
and better, just by seeking balance.
Right. And I go back again to say, look, if there are other people who have different truths, right? We all have our own truths. So someone else may come in and, correct me about some of the things that I said. This is my perspective of what I've experienced in my limited view. So there may be other Jews and other Palestinians that have their own views of what they've experienced. And it's important to welcome it all. I just invite people to have, again, as you said, Nada, open mind, open dialogue, open heart, and let's see how we can come together and make changes in the world that we can all live with.
Completely agree.
Well, yeah, and I think anyone that connects with this, if you guys can share this, I mean, this is, I think, this isn't a topic I would have discussed probably even months ago until we started realizing what was going on, specifically me in this. And it's really cool to have a platform where people can come and have articulate, conversations such as this. And it's not an 8-second TikTok video. I mean, it's hard to cram all that in. But I will say, with what Nada does put on TikTok, it's amazing how much that you're able to articulate into those moments. And so hopefully people, when they see you, they can, see that and use that as a tool to find this and find a longer conversation to see the impact that you're truly having. And that's what I hope. I just hope people share this for the primarily so that people can come together and understand how similar we really all are. I mean, it's just it's kind of sad that there's these lies. We're talking about division. We do see it in the last couple of years. I mean, we see it with, I mean, maybe we'll try and put this on YouTube. I don't know, but we see it with the jab and the brainwashing and families. And, I've sent, messages to people, and I said, I'm not going to say who, but someone that I'm close to, I pray that nothing happens to your child because this person was vaccinated. And in there, there goes YouTube, but,
I was going to say,
but maybe, but my point is that they, due to our different viewpoints in the last couple years, they read it as, I hope that something happens to your child. And I'm sitting there like, did you not read what I said? And then it took this person a month and a half to respond because I think they were shocked that they read into it. But that division, it goes into the layers of their subconscious, and then they just think of me or people that represent what I talk about as fact. And it was horrifying to me that this person read that. And I'm like, how could you think, here I am, that I have a show with a dear friend standing up for children, standing for humanity, yet I'd want this person's child within their body to be harmed? Like it's like, it was baffling to me. So,
but this kind of thing, it's started, accelerated, aggravated by narratives, and we're just acting out based on these narratives. The individual experience is put on the back burner while we play the game, and maybe we need to stop listening so much to the narrative and listen more to each other.
My biggest hope through all of this is that people start to really learn discernment, that when they start to realize how much that we have all been lied to, and how much in every aspect of our life, in our education system, in our religious system, in, you know, in business, every part of our lives we've been lied to, and how we just want to be complicit, be good people, not make waves, and just stand for it. And here's my question. All of those people who were anti-war in the 60s and 70s, and all those artists who stood up and wrote the amazing music, where are they? Where's the women's lib movement right now? We've lost so much with all of that's going on. Where are the voices, the really amazing voices? It's just, they've all been brainwashed.
You know, and there's also one thing that's going on in the last 2 years that we didn't have before, which is cancel culture. People are terrified to speak out, because cancel culture will not only go for you, but now they're starting to go for your families. Yeah. And so on TikTok, I don't disclose where I am. I don't disclose my last name. I don't disclose, you know, any personal information. Most of my videos are shot really close because I'm trying not to show any landmarks. And I don't worry about myself. I have 2 elderly parents, and I have nieces and nephews, and I cannot fathom anything happening to them. So these people that don't speak out, that did before, well, before there was different consequences than we have now. And I think that's a deterring factor in people speaking out against anything these days. There are people that still do it, and, you know, they're passionate about it, but just people are afraid. There is a fear. I think what the intent of it to put fear in people's life is actually working, because people are refusing to get involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that we've left out? Anything you obviously we want to, you know, have you guys put your contact information, where to find you and all that. Is there anything you want to close on? Anything we've left out, please?
Lisa, you want to go first?
I could keep going. So I know the viewers would be like, "Could you shut her up now? I've got enough of her." But you know what? I think I pretty much said what I wanted to say. But here's some interesting information, and that I don't know if you know anything about this. I saw a post that said that one of Obama's last things that he did while he was in office was he sent something, was it $22 million to the Palestinians? And I was like, what was that about? Do you know anything about, like, what the real purpose of that, or what was behind?
No. So every year, the U.S. sends in foreign aid money to Israel and to Afghanistan, Iraq. I think they have a list of, you know, countries, and Palestine is one of them, specifically to the West Bank and Gaza. And not to put my personal opinion out there, I think it's a little hypocritical to do that, to send money to Palestine if you're funding, you know, the Zionist regime. But I don't know why. I probably need to go back and do some research there. Obama did a lot of things that I'm just like, oh my God, we probably need a whole segment to talk about Obama. Right. And the stuff that he did. But that 22 million, I don't know it specifically why that.
Yeah, that just came up, and I was like, I wonder what the purpose, because it was like highlighted. So I don't know at the end of his term, although you mentioned something, you know, again, they fund both sides, right? They fund both sides so that they keep the war machine going, so that we can continue to buy more missiles and, you know, launch at each other. You know, it's like a Palestinian child will throw a rock and they come back with a grenade. Is that okay? Really? Is that okay? Burn down a building because a child threw a rock? It's not okay.
No.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, ladies, thank you. Lisa, we'll start with you. Where can people find you, your website, etc.? And then Nada, we'll go with you.
So I have 2 websites, Lisa Schermerhorn Coaching and .com, and then I have cnlpcoaching.com, which is for the Center for Next Level Performance.com. So I have this business businesswoman persona, and then I have my truther persona, and they're slowly coming together.
Yes, very cool.
So, and you can also find my book on Amazon, In Every Belief is a Lie.
I love it.
It's very
And,
good.
so you want to know more about how we're programmed. So thank you for that.
And Nada, to you, where can people find you?
I have a TikTok page and my handle is Nada the Goat. So it's NADATHEGOAT. And I also have an email that I would, if anyone has any questions, they can email me directly. And it's palinada, so PALINADA 80@gmail.com.
And I love you need to explain why it's Netta the Goat, because it has nothing to do with the greatest of all time.
Not at all. I am a Capricorn. so Capricorn is a goat, and I just thought it was funny. And by the way, that triggers a lot of people when they see my handle. They're like, "You're not the greatest." I'm like, "I'm just a goat."
Well, we can't end on a much better statement than that. Ladies, we'll talk again soon.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
coming.
Thank
All right,
you.
take care, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Bye, Lisa.